Next, our guest is going to talk about food and medicine. If you can turn to page 64 in your education guide, you can follow along. From exercise to eating we go, using food as medicine. I'd like to introduce you to, it's Chaya, right? We met at lunch briefly. So Chaya Lee Charles, she's a registered dietitian nutritionist with over 10 years of experience working with the aging population right here in Central New York. Earned her bachelor's and master's in nutrition science at Syracuse. Chaya is a board-certified specialist in gerontological, is that right? I didn't practice that first. Nutrition with, in her own words, a passion for using food as medicine. Currently, she is assistant teaching professor in the nutrition program in Falk College at Syracuse University, where I believe you taught this morning already, right? So it's a busy day. Please help me welcome to the podium Chaya Lee Charles. Thank you so much for being here today.
Good afternoon. So yes, I am Chaya Charles. I'm a dietitian. So I'm a gerontological nutritionist, which means essentially that I've specialized in nutrition and aging and all of the nutritional issues that come about with aging, including Parkinson's disease. I've worked with Patrick and Empower Parkinson's for a couple years, but prior to that, we actually worked at St. Camillus together. And we did a program on brain health, and so this has really been a passion of mine and something that I've been interested in for over a decade. So today we're going to talk about using food as medicine, which in the US is somewhat of kind of a novel concept, but in other parts of the world this is not new at all. This has been being done for thousands of years, where they've used different spices and herbs and foods as a portion of their treatment for certain diseases. And so it's something that's come to the forefront of medicine in this country as we try to focus a bit more on prevention and using natural treatments over just waiting until something happens and then treating it with medication and pharmaceuticals, right? Okay, so objectives for today. I'm going to talk about the evolution of nutrition concerns that I have seen commonly and people have expressed to me over the course of Parkinson's disease. Certainly not everything that I talk about is going to apply to everybody, but chances are it'll apply to somebody. And so I've seen a wide range of things, and we'll talk about all of those today. We're also going to talk about nutritional goals and priorities for people with Parkinson's disease. So throughout my career, I also did home care for a long time, and what I see happen is that this doctor tells you you can't have salt, and then this doctor tells you you shouldn't eat fat, and then this doctor tells you you need to eat more of this thing. And then slowly but surely, with all your different specialists, you've whittled down to you essentially can eat cardboard and water. And so then people come to me and they say, I have no idea what I can eat. So one of my goals always is, when I sit with someone, is to what I call nutritionally prioritize. And what that is looking at you as a whole person, not just all these different diseases on a piece of paper, and say, okay, what can we do nutritionally that is going to benefit you the most, make you feel the best, make you have the best outcomes? So that's what I mean when I say nutritionally prioritize. We're then going to talk about ways to promote ideal digestive function. Constipation and other digestive issues are very common in people with Parkinson's and something that I've worked with a lot. So we'll talk specifically about that and how to help manage that. And then the presenter before me obviously did a fantastic job talking about resources for caregivers and gave you some good avenues. I will talk about a few resources that are specific to nutrition for caregivers and kind of mimic a few of the things that she was saying. So what is nutrition? One of, I would say, the biggest misconceptions is that as a dietitian, I'm going to put everyone on a diet. So I will go in a place and people think I'm the food police, and then I'm going to tell them they can never have another piece of cake again, and that's my only job. And so my job is not that. I am a dietitian that believes you can eat cake and you can eat anything that you want. We just have to figure out how to make it all fit in. And so we can use food in a way that makes us happy as well as makes us healthy. And that does not include going on a diet, right? I don't know too many people who are ever on a diet that were very happy. So that's not my goal. I'm never going to put you on a diet. So nutrition, what it really is if you look in a textbook, it is the biochemical and physiological process by which organisms use food. So essentially, it's how we eat and what we eat that makes us healthy and makes us continue to live. It is not about too much carbs and too much fat and too little protein and this and that and the other thing. It's not about that. It's eating healthfully to promote extended life and best quality of life. So nutrition is important throughout the lifespan, and I think what happens is that, at least I've seen in my career, that in infants and toddlers and children, we tend to focus a lot on nutrition because we think, oh, they're children and they're growing, and we need to make sure that we're feeding them the right things so that they grow and they're healthy and they're strong. And then as people age, they tend to kind of put the focus on nutrition a bit on the back burner. And so today, my hope when you walk away from here is that you bring it all the way to the front of the stove, because nutrition plays a role in every single process and organ system in your body, every single one. So what you eat has an impact on everything from how you move to how healthy you are, to how you sleep, to how you heal, to your mood, to your cognitive function, to your muscle ability. It literally plays a role in every single thing. So we need to make sure that we're prioritizing it all through life. Your weight status is also important. Now, does that mean that I think everyone should go and make sure that they are not overweight and that they are as thin as they can be and that they meet that healthy, normal idea on a BMI chart? I absolutely do not think that. Over the age of 65, research is very clear and shows that weight loss does not promote improved health or extended life. So what happens when people over the age of 65 lose significant weight is they actually tend to become less healthy. They're at a higher risk of falls, a higher risk of hospitalizations, and a higher risk of complications that in some cases can lead to death. So I do not want any of you to go home and lose weight. I actually want most of you to maintain your weight. And so that's also a surprising thing, I think, when I sit down with people and they say, oh, well, I'm about 20 pounds too heavy. And I say, okay, that's fine. Because it is fine, honestly, especially in Parkinson's, when we're talking about a disease that tends to deteriorate your muscle mass. The last thing we want to be doing is promoting that to happen further. And if you are losing weight, that actually can be promoting that. Adequate nutrition is also important in terms of cognitive and neurological function. So the way that your brain functions is highly related to your nutritional intake. One of the biggest trends that has become the bane of my existence over the past decade or so is the low-carb diet trend. Your brain has to have carbohydrates to function properly. And if we don't give it carbohydrates to function properly, it actually has to pull energy from the rest of our body by breaking down other tissues, which is, I don't think, what we want to have happen, right? So it's important for cognitive and function to make sure that we are eating enough of every nutrient and that we're not eliminating anything specifically. So nutrition specifically related to Parkinson's is a newer area of research, and there are some interesting studies going on as we speak. To date, as of today, there is no one specific type of meal plan or quote-unquote diet specifically prescribed to people with Parkinson's disease. But there are things that I'll talk about as we go through in the upcoming slides that we do know help in terms of prevention, and so prevention in worsening potentially of Parkinson's and in treatment. One of the big things that we know has huge neurological and cognitive benefits is adequate vitamin B intake. So vitamin B is involved in cell metabolism, so essentially the life cycle of your cells. B6, B12, and folate are common deficiencies as people age, and those have a direct correlation to decreased cognitive function. If someone is actually B12 deficient, the symptoms can mimic dementia. I have had patients who actually had families who thought that they were developing dementia, and they went to their primary care, and I said, ask them for a B12 level, asked them to check your B12, and they were B12 deficient, and their cognitive function had declined because of a vitamin deficiency. They did not have dementia. So that's how important some of these things are. Folate deficiency, also super common, which can lead to anemia, which can lead to an increased risk of falls because increased energy, increased tiredness. Our vitamin B12 levels naturally decrease as we age, and it's because as we age, we make less and less of a certain enzyme that helps us to absorb vitamin B12. So as we age, we absorb less of it. So that's why B12 becomes a common deficiency as we age. Usually, if you are deficient, you have to get it, taking a pill supplement isn't going to help you. That's something I like to point out. You would need it like through an injection, like a shot. So food sources of vitamin B12 are those that you see listed here, which I will not read all through for you. B12 is an important one also for any of you that eat highly plant-based diets. So if you don't eat a lot of meat and you don't eat a lot of dairy, there's also a chance that you're not getting enough B12 in your diet regularly. Folate is common in fruits and vegetables, as well as our grain supply is fortified with folate. One thing also that has become very trendy lately is the gluten-free phase. Some of you may have physicians that have recommended that you go gluten-free. There's very limited research showing any benefits of avoiding gluten if you are not somebody who has celiac disease. And what can potentially happen if you are avoiding gluten is that gluten-free products are not fortified with extra folate. Our regular wheat supply, grain supply in the US is fortified, and that is where a large amount of people actually get the majority of their folate intake in a day. If you are switching to a gluten-free diet, chances are you are not getting that fortification. And so it's something to talk about with your doctor or with your dietitian if you really need to be following that diet. Another thing that is important dietary-wise is antioxidants. So I'm sure you've all heard about antioxidants being healthy for you. But how many people here could honestly tell me what a definition is? Like, what does an antioxidant do? Show of hands, right? So everyone knows that they're good for you, but no one really knows why. So, and that's because nobody ever really tells you why. So here I am, I'm here to tell you why. So antioxidants function in our body like an army. So we are bombarded all day, every day with toxins that essentially attack our cells, right? So everything from the shampoo that we use, to makeup, to the air that we breathe, to things that are in our water, to the food that we eat and the pesticide residues on it, and all of these things. These are toxins, essentially. Our body is able to fight them off and filter them through for the most part. However, we are constantly being bombarded, our cells are, with those toxins. Antioxidants help in that they create kind of an army, like a wall around your cells, and help prevent those toxins from damaging the cells. So that's why antioxidants are important, because they're essentially helping cells to stay healthy. If you're helping the cells in your body to stay healthy, there's much less likely chance that you will develop certain diseases or have certain diseases worsen. So that's why antioxidants are important. There's a few different ones that you hear about mostly. Carotenoids are one. That's essentially, it's a form of vitamin A. So that is why you hear like carrots are good for your eyesight and such things. That's carotenoids that are doing that. And that is actually the pigment that turns certain vegetables orange. So when we say things like eat the rainbow, antioxidants are really the reason that we're recommending that, because all of the colors that make fresh fruits and vegetables, those specific dark colors, are antioxidant. They have antioxidant properties. Flavonoids are another compound that are found in plant-based foods. So eat enough fruits and vegetables. There's lots of reasons that we promote that, but antioxidant function is one of them. Also, there's lots of herbs that have flavonoids in them. So using fresh herbs over dried herbs in your cooking is helpful. And vitamin E is also very important for cell health. Vitamin E is found in different vegetable oils, like safflower oil and corn oil, whole grain products, peanut butter. Those are very good and healthy for you. Vitamin E is probably the most researched antioxidant, so we do know pretty much without a doubt that that is helpful in cell health. Another thing that I promote to people is enough omega-3 fatty acids. So omega-3 fatty acids are considered an essential fatty acid. That means that we have to get them from our diet. Our body cannot make them on their own or convert certain fats into these. You have to get them from your diet. So if you're not eating enough of these foods listed up here that are high in omega-3s, then chances are you're not getting enough DHA to really have that protective benefit that we know omega-3 fats can have. Studies have shown a positive association between cell health, cardiovascular disease, neurological health, with good intake of omega-3. However, all those studies show a good amount of help from food sources, not necessarily from a supplement. So in my food as medicine push that I'm always giving people, it's because I would rather have you get all of these things from actual real food and not from a bottle, not from a shake, not from a pill, not from any of those things. We do not digest, absorb, utilize those nutrients the same when we get them in supplement form as we do when they're in a food with other things. So when you hear about omega-3 fats being healthy, it's from food sources. Now, if you are someone who already takes an omega-3 supplement or your doctor told you to, it's not hurting you by any means, but we do know that if you're getting it from food, it's probably more beneficial than the pill that you're taking. Other dietary fats, so these are ones that we don't want a lot of. These are ones that have been shown to be harmful. Saturated fat and trans fat. Trans fat is the fat that comes from processing of fats. So a lot of cookies and baked items and potato chips and things like that potentially have trans fats in them. These fats are harmful in excess because they actually increase inflammation in your body. And having chronic inflammation in your body creates a state of higher risk for other health issues, as well as a potential worsening of Parkinson's symptoms. It also is associated with cardiovascular disease, and trans fats, for the most part, there was actually legislation pushed through that manufacturers were supposed to eliminate them as much as possible. But if you look at an ingredients label and you see partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, that product contains trans fats. It might be a small amount, but if that is in the ingredients list, that means that there's trans fats in that product, because that hydrogenation process is what creates trans fats. So although there's not a specific diet that we recommend for Parkinson's, there are certain styles of eating that we know are potentially helpful. And one of them is the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet is a diet that's very high in fruits and vegetables, so high in those antioxidants that I just talked about. It's high in fish, so high in omega-3s. It's high in legumes, so it's high in the healthy fats that we talked about. It's high in grains, meaning that it has good vitamin B intake and good fiber intake. So there's lots of different versions of the Mediterranean diet. If you were to Google it, there's a million different versions of what the right one is. But essentially, it is the diet that traditionally was eaten in the Mediterranean area. And these people in this area historically have improved health outcomes with certain diseases, including Parkinson's disease. There's actually, have any of you ever heard of the blue zone? Right, so the blue zones are these areas where there's a disproportionately high number of people who live to be over 100. When you look at the diet of these people, many of them are following a Mediterranean-style diet. So nutrition research is hard, because how do I tell that somebody didn't get cancer or someone didn't get Parkinson's because they ate a lot of blueberries, right? Because nobody just eats blueberries. We all eat tons of different things all the time. So nutrition research is difficult because there's so many components that go into what we eat all day, every day, that it's very hard to say this one thing. If you eat enough of this one thing, then it means you won't get a certain disease. We can't necessarily say that, but what we can say is these people who eat these types of foods tend to have lower rates of certain diseases. The MIND diet is the current diet that's being mostly researched in terms of Parkinson's and other cognitive neurological diseases. The MIND diet is kind of a version of the Mediterranean diet, focused on plant-based foods. It limits the intake of animal products even more so than the traditional Mediterranean diet does. It also eliminates well, doesn't eliminate, but minimizes the intake of saturated fat. And in the preliminary studies that have come out, people who follow this diet have had improvement in symptoms of Parkinson's because this diet tends to decrease overall inflammation in the body. So common nutritional concerns of people that I've worked with over my time in working with Parkinson's disease. One is inadequate protein intake, and I'm going to go into all of these in a little bit of detail. So inadequate protein intake. I worry when I see someone who doesn't necessarily eat meat anymore, and so I immediately think, okay, how are they maybe getting enough protein? As we age, people tend to decrease their protein intake for lots of different reasons. Maybe you've become lactose intolerant, so you don't eat dairy anymore. Maybe you have chewing or swallowing difficulty, so meat has become difficult for you. Maybe you have diverticulosis, so you don't eat nuts anymore. Maybe you have high cholesterol, and so your doctor told you to not eat too many eggs. Well, there's pretty much all your sources of protein right there. So if we're eliminating or lessening all of those, chances become that we start not eating enough protein. At the same time, as we age, we don't absorb protein as well, and so the amount you have to eat actually increases. So sometimes I see people and their protein intake has decreased, but their needs for protein have actually increased. So we chat about that and figure out ways specifically that we can meet our protein needs with their specific issues. Now, I know a lot of you are on certain medications where we have to worry about protein intake and the amount of timing that needs to be before and after medications. That's something that I work with people individually, but there almost always is a way to meet your protein needs even with the timing. Some people, if they're on like a 4-time-a-day medication, we might have to do some kind of supplement drink, protein shake, thing like that, but most of the time we can meet it. Protein is so important in Parkinson's because adequate protein intake preserves your muscle function. If you are not consuming adequate protein, your body will break down muscle tissue for other uses in the body. The last thing anyone in this room needs, whether you have Parkinson's or do not have Parkinson's, is to have muscle tissue being broken down because you're not eating enough protein. So especially if you're someone who has a disease that already your body's trying to do that, we don't want to exacerbate that and make that worse. So we want to make sure that you're getting enough protein so that your muscles are as strong as possible so that we're decreasing that risk of falls. The source of protein is important. So whether it's an animal protein or a plant protein, that does make a difference. And I would chat with somebody individually about what way we should go about. Another issue that we run into is unplanned weight loss. Unplanned weight loss, as I said in the beginning of this speech, is problematic because it shows very strong correlation to hospitalization and death. We do not want people losing weight, especially if they are not intending to. If all of a sudden I see somebody and they say, I've lost 10 pounds in the past couple months, I see a huge red flag go up and say, okay, we need to chat because something is going on, we need to fix that, we need to stop it. And even if we can't regain the 10 pounds, we need to not have one more pound go off. And so let's figure out what's happening, and let's figure out how we need to adjust your meal plan so that you don't keep losing weight, which really isn't usually that big of changes that people think. Sometimes people have decreased appetite and they think, oh God, I couldn't possibly eat another thing in a day. I have to force myself to eat as it is. There's lots of ways that we can increase the calorie content of foods without you having to actually eat more foods. There's lots of ways that we can do that. If you do lose weight, you tend to have higher risk of falls because you also tend to have muscle wasting. But the other thing is, especially in these COVID times, unplanned weight loss leads to decreased immunity because if your protein intake is low, our immune cells are made of protein. And so that means that your immune function can't be as high as it could be if you have unplanned weight loss and protein wasting. Dehydration is a big one, and this kind of leads us into the digestive issues. So dehydration is extremely common. If I were to take the blood work of everybody in this room quickly, it would probably tell me that about 55% of us are borderline dehydrated. There's a large percentage of the population that walks around kind of just on the brink of being dehydrated all the time. It doesn't mean you can't function. It doesn't mean that you necessarily feel bad, but you're like just hydrated enough to be able to function. A lot of people are not meeting their fluid needs. This especially comes into play if people are starting to have swallowing difficulties and need thickened liquids. Fluid intake tends to decrease. Our sense of thirst actually also decreases as we age, so you may just not feel as thirsty as the years go along, even though your fluid needs actually stay the same. And so we worry about dehydration for lots of reasons. One, because it can make you very sick very fast. So there's very serious health complications. If you aren't drinking enough, like significantly, say you're sick and not really drinking, that will land you in the hospital within a few days, right? Water is the best option. However, put a little asterisk next to this part. Everything you drink does not have to be water, okay? A lot of people don't love water, myself included. I'm a dietitian, and I will freely tell you, unless I'm working out, I cannot stand to drink a glass of water. It's just, I hate it. So I have figured out other ways that I put lemon in it, or I buy like sparkling water, which by the way is not the same as soda. Sparkling water is just carbonated regular water. You can drink that the same. So we would figure out like, what do you like to drink? As long as it's decaffeinated and non-alcoholic, it is contributing towards your hydration. Okay, so decaffeinated and non-alcoholic. So juice counts, milk counts, soup that you have for lunch counts, decaffeinated coffee and tea count. Ice cream actually counts a little bit. So when we talk about your fluid needs, it's all these things in a whole day added up that is actually making you well hydrated, okay? I think sometimes people get overwhelmed when they think, how could I possibly drink 8 more glasses of water? I already drink coffee and this and this. There's no way that I could drink 8 more glasses of water. It doesn't have to be 8 more glasses of water, right? You want to drink water mostly, but we can certainly add in other things, and that still counts towards your hydration. Swallowing difficulty, I'm sure there's some people in the room who have experienced this or have loved ones who've experienced this. If you haven't, that's great. But some people do, and it leads to a need for ground food or pureed food or thickened liquids. So choking becomes a concern at this point. People tend to eat less if the act of eating becomes more labor intensive, right? If you have to sit down and it takes you 45 minutes to eat half a plate of food, then you probably don't want the other half of food. I understand that, because who wants to have every meal become an hour-and-a-half long process? So for you caregivers, that's something that we do have to think about, right? If sitting there for a meal is kind of like a job, people aren't gonna wanna do it all the time, right? They're gonna not wanna sit there for that long. So in that situation, we also have to look at all right, if we're only gonna eat this much, how do we make that the most high calorie, jam-packed, full of nutrition, little bit of food that we possibly can? So we look at that in people who have swallowing difficulties as well. I would work with a speech therapist, and we would work to figure out what's the least restrictive way that we can keep somebody safe and still meet their nutrition needs. And then constipation. So constipation is a very frequent issue that I come across. One is medication related. Some of your medications actually cause constipation. The other reason is that in Parkinson's, the muscle movements in your digestive system actually slow because of the disease. And so food literally is not being pushed through your digestive system as efficiently as it usually is. So although there may not be something we can necessarily do about the muscle issue itself, how we eat can impact the movement of food as well. So one, and the biggest thing, also highlight this, most of the time when I see people who are constipated, it is less of an issue with what they're eating than it is how much they're drinking. Most people, when I see them and they're constipated, are also slightly dehydrated. If you are not drinking enough fluid, it doesn't matter how healthy you're eating as far as the foods go. The water is not getting in to push everything through your digestive system. So the first thing that we tackle in constipation is making sure that you're well hydrated. Then we would go on to thinking about other types of fiber and making sure that you have fiber intake that's adequate. But we do not increase somebody's fiber unless they're drinking enough. Because do you know what happens then? We create a giant backup, and it makes the whole issue way worse. So we're not increasing fiber before we're making sure that your fluids are adequate, okay? The other thing that can help in terms of preventing constipation issues is making sure that you're eating enough foods that have the probiotics and prebiotics in them. We've all heard about those, right? Probiotics are essentially the healthy bacteria that's in some foods, especially fermented foods, so things like yogurt and those types of things. So we do promote yogurt. You'll hear me promote yogurt to people all the time. It doesn't really matter what kind. It doesn't have to be the Jamie Lee Curtis Activia kind because she says so on TV. All yogurt has probiotics, okay? And it's those probiotics that help make a good digestive environment in your stomach that helps break things down efficiently and move them through your system. So having a good GI health is one of the most important things in preventing constipation as well. So overall, when I work with anyone, but especially with Parkinson's patients, I am looking at how for each person we're optimizing your digestive function and absorption. And this is where I'm nutritionally prioritizing. If you have swallowing difficulties, certainly we're worried about you choking, we're gonna deal with those first. But overall, how can I make sure that you're getting enough nutrients, that you're absorbing them properly, and that we are moving everything through your system in an efficient manner? That's what I am gonna do when I sit down with somebody or when I conduct my classes. This is my son. So for those of you who attend Empower Parkinson's in the gym, this fall am going to start doing, and I've done them in the past, and I know some people in this room that I see. So we're adding in a nutrition series twice a month, and we are going to do some classes where we have a topic every month, and we're going to talk about how to meet a certain nutrition need. And then the second one, we're going to do a cooking class, and I'm going to Rachel Ray, and we're going to cook something that deals with the topic from earlier in the month. So that's a series that's going to be starting actually this month. So kind of a shameless plug for you all to tune into that because they will be Zoomed as well as in person. But I have the picture of my son up there because I also, in addition to being a dietitian, I own a farm. And so one of the things that is really a big passion of mine is growing things that are healthy for my family and that are healthy for us to eat and doesn't have tons of pesticides on them. There's not conclusive research, 100% that says that Parkinson's is caused by pesticides, but there's pretty strong research showing that it certainly doesn't help. And so the more we can get fresh, whole, clean, natural food into your diet, the more healthy you're gonna be, the better you're gonna feel, and likely the better your Parkinson's symptoms are gonna be. So we have some exciting plans maybe in the works for the spring, so stay tuned to that. But I like to bring that into my work. And then resources for caregivers, we already had the great presentation. There's a few different websites that you can visit for nutrition-specific information. Parkinsons.org actually has a decent nutrition section that talks about some of the things I talked about today. Also, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. That is my professional association that I'm a part of, that all registered dietitians in the US are a part of. They will provide information on there as well as links to lots of other resources. Anything that is on that website has been proven by research. It's a scientific study that's done, so you can trust any of the information that's there, and you can trust any of the links that take you from there. One of the frustrating things with nutrition is that there's so much information out there. Sometimes it's hard to weed through the stuff that's not true to get to the stuff that is true. If you start at that site, then you're going to be on the train to only getting good quality information. Or you can always call me or contact Pat, who can get in touch with me, and I can always lead you in a certain way as well. Okay, thank you very much.